What does it mean to seal your body? I think it's important to note that the body is comprised or made up of many different things, all with their respective overlapping principles and functions. We're able to compensate well with our bodies, develop compensations, that is, and compensations come in many forms, many of which manifest unbeknownst to the user and become their normal operating state, as well as where they give birth to their internal dialogues. The specific system that I wish to speak about today is going to be the circulatory system and the ability to enhance the functionality and the experience with our circulatory systems through intervening mechanically to essentially jumpstart and bring back to life the multi-directional pumps that are gifted to us through our human design, I suppose you could say, and that facilitate better flow within us, namely blood, but circulation is a concept, and I believe it not to be only limited to blood. So for instance, our sinuses are kind of like little pumps, like you might see on like a Reebok shoe, that old novelty kind of pump thing, which never really caught on, or maybe it did, depending on where you live. Push down on any pump, anything that's kind of self-inflating. It compresses, it creates a bit of a vacuum. When you release it, it has an intake that's proportionately designed for that degree of compression, and it draws air back in at a rate that the container can allow, and that just repeats. And I think it's important to note in those situations, the 2 degrees of pressure are things that can stay active with one another when there is a proper system functioning. And to put that in another perspective, I think what we as people tend to do in modern society and through an evolution of de-evolution in a way, we've built up these deviations of our own human design that inhibit proper functionality of the pumping systems of our bodies. So for instance, our sinuses are very pump-like in nature. They can deflate and inflate, and based on our apertures or mechanical intakes, namely the mouth, the nose, they're all designed to constrict and diverge, and the circulatory system is bound by those same principles. During an inhale, there's this suction that also can be referred to as negative pressure, that consolidates the cavities so that air can work out from its genesis points as it enters the body and expand things in respect to the DNA coding or design that's wired within our cells. If your cavities do not consolidate for then engorgement and saturation to follow, it's possible that the space that you perceive within yourself is yet to be claimed or has been temporarily lost due to events in your life and ways that you've associated to your life and to yourself. The quality of suction across your face as you breathe in, and how well it distributes through the tissues of your face, your sinuses, your throat, through the narrow cranial cavity that goes from our foreheads all the way below our scalps and into the back of our necks. So the quality of how well you can consolidate your cavities through negative pressure or suction, that's meant to happen automatically, just to reiterate, but can be intervened and trained intentionally and manually. The quality of that is going to determine how well you can basically center into the space that you occupy and then express yourself outwardly through your nerves and your circulatory system and your muscles and your bones and everything like that. If all the suction is consolidated to one area, or not as present as it could be in an area, a basic example of that would be asymmetries. If you have some sort of long-standing or constant hip asymmetry, tilt, rotation, leg length discrepancy, 2 feet and ankles that are doing opposing passive postures, as well as even eye discrepancies, facial asymmetries. All of these speak to what I'm speaking to, which is imbalances within our intrinsic pressure systems that work to properly close the loop of our bodies so that we can manage our energy, emotion, and thoughts better. In my experience, this is the case. It has become clear that what we deprive ourselves in this life, as well as how our perceptions of ourselves and of others become distorted, are heavily leveraged by the constraints and the limitations that we put on ourselves through our bodies. For instance, up until about 2 weeks ago, I had not spoken to my brother in roughly a year. The last time we had spoke, it was a pretty good conversation, and we've had trouble reconciling our differences in the past, and neither one of us contacted one another for an extended period. Maybe it was us finally understanding that we are not the same person, nor do either of us wish to be the same person. So we granted one another the space we needed to process that information. So I went to see him at his home, and as I ring the doorbell, he pulls in right behind me. And I thought that was a pretty synchronicial way to meet once again. We hugged in his garage once he got out of his vehicle, and a lot was said in that hug. Minutes later, we're yakking in his kitchen about work. He's busting my balls, as it seems to feel right to do so, telling him about the things that I've been learning in recent time. It was a great time. An hour or two go by, and I'm driving home, and I'm doing my best, as I normally am, to rest into my circulatory pathways that I know to be based on my current knowledge and intuition of sorts. I find myself kind of laughing to myself on the drive home, just thinking about different ways to annoy my brother. Something I haven't thought of in I don't even know how long, but it was very playful and harmless, and it was bringing me a lot of joy in the moment. He's 14 years older than me, so there is a bit of an age discrepancy to kind of verify the fact that we have the right dynamic to potentially, for me to be annoying him. So as I'm driving home, I'm in a really happy state, reflecting on what just transpired with my brother and I. And all of a sudden, basically, like right at my right TMJ, or like the right side of my jaw, everything here just kind of went and clicked into place. And I just felt a lot more integrated in my body. It felt like I kind of moved across the car almost like 6 inches, just based on the spatial awareness that I don't think I was operating in seconds before. It connected to the suction that kind of passively rests through my face and allows my head to be buoyant to some degree. It's a part of that system. So my entire structure, posture, alignment in that moment altered itself to express an agreeance to how I just held myself and conducted myself, and essentially the state that I was in and continued to remain in after having seen my brother for the first time in a long time. Our left sides are meant to represent the feminine, whereas the right are meant to represent the masculine. The conflict with my brother, which really oriented around me feeling that I needed to live through his struggles in order to validate what he went through, which I must have picked up at an early age, I think, that it's a virtuous path to emulate another and live vicariously through them, as they can vicariously witness you moving through their struggles, it seemed like at one point when I must have wanted to feel a certain love from my father, my brother, it was something that I maybe adopted. And I believe that when I decided that, I must have felt that it was an honorable way to receive love. Because if I validate another's existence and their personal struggles, the same struggles that people often don't feel understood by, then perhaps I will be able to receive the love that I feel they deserve to give themselves. And when we hugged in that garage and a lot was said, we held on for just a little bit extra, that was all I needed to hear. I was present enough in that moment, and the circumstances leading up to that were stark enough, or perhaps the field was otherwise bare. There was no noise that was distracting me from this simple hug with my brother. And that hug told me that he loves me unconditionally and that I love him unconditionally. And time can't change that. And nothing within time will change that. And all the things that follow that truth, all the manifestations that we express outwardly as well as inwardly, that can oftentimes make us feel a bit contradictory to a sense of unconditional love and have ourselves questioning it. All those are the current manifestations or series of ways that we see ourselves and we see the world. That's something I'd like to get into in another video. So while we hung out, I maintained the space that I've claimed within my body in the last months and held on to the truth that he loves me and I love him. And as we spoke, we maybe only agree on about 25 to 40% of things, just generally. However, in the past, when my identity was more wrapped up with him, and he would communicate things and express things in ways that I saw to be unfavorable or unattractive even. And in a way, it was our way of forcing oneness. You know, I think there's some degree of knowing that we are one, and the way that we try to communicate to that, and the way that we sometimes communicate that to one another can be a bit rough around the edges. It's heavily involved with the material stuff of the world and our specific perspectives, but you still see the oneness trying to be created, because we are, the oneness is trying to be remembered, maybe I could say, because we do, sometimes it's maybe a fault of humans, but we do try to project our values onto others. And I think that is some sort of a grasping at oneness. It's, I don't believe it's the way to go about it. It's typically very ineffective and causes more grief than gain, but it's a distorted version of it. And when I would see things in him that I did not like, since I had not accepted the unconditional love that I have for myself, or the unconditional love that we have between us, my body in parts would retract into itself and try to make itself smaller as a way of showing disapproval of what it's seeing. Eventually manifesting into the physical artifact that is my body, an accumulation of all the ways that I've felt and made myself feel. Our inner bodies, to me, appear to be what wants to feel different first, so that it can express itself in the way we're meant to be over longer periods of time, until our outer structures are now artifacts of the person that we've always wanted to be. And on the way home, I gained a lot of clarity regarding my own identity and how I feel I want my relationship to be with my brother. And I realized that I really just want to play with him. Like, it's something that we never got to do through our developmental years. We ended up connecting through working together. We work in the same trade, and we've worked together in the past, and our work or our relationship has kind of become just based solely on work. And that's what our common ground has been left at. And once all the noise cleared when I met him at his house and in the aftermath, I was able to identify that, as well as my body rewarded me for not taking on too much energy of someone else's and instead staying sovereign in my own frame. It said, boom, here's a closer approximation of the man that you are now remembering that you came to this planet to become. Keep in mind, this isn't like some instant fix where, you know, everything just changed in my body and my bones got bigger in a split second because I had a talk with my brother or whatever. Like, it's, firstly, it's a deeply personal experience. And before, like I said earlier, before outer growth is seen, inner growth and inner stability and inner structure and inner scaffolding and inner continuity and flow, all of those things are experienced prior to an outer structure being definitively different. It's one and then the other. And at that moment, the connection was formed, the synapse was created, or maybe the synapse was remembered, you know, recreated. I also see it as my nervous system giving the allowance to occupy that space and feeling safe to do so. Basically, I had endured enough of a timeline where previously there was some sort of cycle where I was waiting to feel not loved. And because I took it upon myself to be different in that situation and accept what I've received right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, there was no words attached to it. It was a hug. And I chose to hold on to that and let go of all the noise. And I did that long enough. A couple hours wasn't that long if you break it down to that specific window. And my body was like, okay, cool. We don't need to resent men. We don't need to see all the unattractive things in the men that have left a big impression on you. You know what I mean? Bruxism, grinding your teeth, cross bites, all that kind of stuff I feel is a deviation from balancing the masculine with the feminine in your body, as well as many other overlays. If the masculine and feminine thing is not something that you really align with, I think the more that anybody kind of understands the overlapping principles and concepts that bind all of us in physical laws, then I think we start to see them a little bit more translucently and less as these kind of marketed pitches of different archetypes of people that we may or may not feel anything toward. So because that connection is formed, when I go train myself, when I hang out with people, when I am sitting and making decisions by myself, this is now space that I can occupy. A lot of the cyclical, intrusive thoughts and self-judgment, as well as judgment unto others, are not as present when I occupy more space within myself. There's a deeper sense of security, a deeper sense of knowing, a deeper sense of knowing what belongs to me and what may have snuck in. So the message here is that when we outsource our identity to others and ignore the visceral resistance that we may have to it, as well as try to rationalize things that are meant to be understood differently through our bodies, it's reinforcing the confusion that we have regarding our identities, as well as weakening us physically by way of retracting into ourselves and simultaneously away from ourselves when we see something that we don't want for ourselves. What does it mean to seal your body? Sealing our bodies by way of improving the functionality of our circulatory pathways, as well as the diaphragmatic pumps of our body that facilitate that circulation, provides us with a sense of physical safety and calmness to better perceive and feel in the present moment, and not react and then embody and mirror other people's energies that we may not necessarily desire to choose. Close your own system so that you can open yourself to the world.